On one hand, you got the Rams and their all-in approach to acquiring proven veteran talent, most notably, of course, Matthew Stafford. And then on the other hand, you got the Bengals, who are in the Super Bowl 2 years after winning 2 games and in Joe Burrow's second season. I wonder, what are your league contacts, your sources that you're in constant communication with? What are they saying about these two programs and these organizations making it to the Super Bowl in such divergent ways? One doing it unconventionally, the other one building it from the ground up.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely different builds. I mean, you look at the Bengals, you have to give them some applause because they hit on a number of draft picks. I mean, look at the skill positions alone on offense. Offensive line could use some work. I think that'll get some devotion this offseason. But you know, they've spent a little bit of money in free agency. They're not the cheapskates that we always accuse them of being. They went out there and spent a little cash. But
Thank you, Charles.
They really accentuated some good draft classes, and Joe Burrow hitting huge on a quarterback like this who not only has physical, tools to bring to the table, but then also has the leadership aspect of it that it's going to get cliche throughout his career, but he really clearly has that. And I'll give you a real quick story about Joe Burrow. A couple of years ago, I'm at the Manning Passing Academy, and I'm standing with Justin Herbert, and he was like the big draw. And he'd come back to Oregon. Everybody thought he was going to be the first pick in the draft, all this stuff. And Burrow was in the room, and he was supposed to be a third-round pick, all this stuff. And go out, start watching these guys. And Burrow hung with Herbert. He hung with everybody that was in that camp that day, and came out of it with pretty good reviews. And then, goes through everything in LSU, puts up the biggest, arguably the biggest college quarterback season ever in history. And all I thought of was thinking, like, at the Manning and Passing game, I guess that's supposed to be a third-round pick. It would seem to be like he'd be overshadowed at this event. And he wasn't at all. And he looked like he fit in. He looked very relaxed, and he looked like he was in his element. That's him. That's how he is all the time. Whether it's on the field, off the field, whether he's behind 21-3, whether they're up by 14 points, he's very much that kind of a leader. And that is such a significant part of the bill to hit on a quarterback, but hit on a quarterback who brings almost everything to the table that you need as a franchise. But then you talk about the Rams. They don't have a first-round pick for the next couple of years. They trade all of their big, blue chip assets to go get proven players. And when you talk to people in the league, they see the benefits of. They talk more about the Rams because what the Rams do is a little bit more of a rarity. Most teams don't want to part with first-round draft picks. They don't want to give away draft capital. They don't want to have top-heavy rosters where you have 5 or 6 players that are almost all making near max contracts for their positions. And yet the Rams have succeeded in doing that. And look, some general managers will tell you, like, I get it. I get wanting to go out and get a proven commodity. The flip side of that, though, is just always having to deal with the money of a proven commodity. But they've managed to do that largely because their scouts and their, general manager, and they've been able to cull talent in the middle to later rounds of the draft that has been able to fill holes admirably. So it's I think it's a more difficult build, honestly, with the Rams, because there's just so much more complication. And if even one of those players that you're paying, $18, $20, $25 million to breaks down, all of a sudden that's a catastrophic loss for your team.
Or even just from a chemistry standpoint, that's a lot of egos. It's a lot of voices. It's a lot of characters in that locker room that have all come together, pulling in the same direction. So 20 years after the Tuck rule, the Raiders have tapped into the Patriot way. And as Michael Holley often reminds me, Bill O'Brien is the shiniest and tastiest fruit off of the Bill Belichick coaching tree. You actually were the first person that I remember, but I don't pay attention admittedly, but I wouldn't be shocked if you're the first person to bring it up, to bring up Josh McDaniels resurfacing given the job that he did with Mac Jones. I think after he pulled out of Indianapolis, not a lot of people nationally, at least, Michael, gave him much thought as getting a second opportunity as a head coach. But here he is, head coach of the Raiders, who also tapped into the Patriot way for the general manager spot as well. Why should Raiders fans in particular, but the rest of us, believe that Josh McDaniels will succeed in a way that he didn't in Denver, or that most Bill Belichick assistants don't?
Oh, right, don't. It's a good question. What I like about Josh's career, okay, is that he got away from Tom, okay, and he had a little bit of success with Cam Newton, for a very brief window there. But then he got a chance to start fresh, with Mac Jones. And I think he clearly did a lot of really good things with Mac Jones. And Mac Jones got a lot of talent to work with. But I always feel like the measure is to get out from underneath Brady. Like it's everyone who goes afield, other than like Mike Vrabel and as you said, Bill O'Brien, tends to struggle. Particularly offensive coaches tend to struggle once they get away from a Tom Brady. If I'm a Raiders fan, I'm sitting there going, okay, well, Josh got the Broncos job at a very young age. Carried a titanic ego with him that immediately he ran into significant issues with Jay Cutler, which, is now in the long view of history, by the way, even that is a little less now knowing what we know about Jay, which, by the way, we didn't necessarily know at the time in Denver. You can understand why those two were cross with each other pretty quickly in that program. I just think maybe you got to see if he's learned. I will also say this. He made really good hires in Indianapolis before he bailed on that job. Like Matt Eberflus. Matt Eberflus was an unbelievable gift that he left behind, hey, come. And, Eberflus, obviously a head coach, gets the head coaching job, did a fantastic job as DC in Indianapolis. So I would tend to believe that at least in the second opportunity that he had with Indianapolis, he knew he wasn't afraid to go get coaches that he was probably going to lose to potentially being head coaches later. I don't want to jump on the Josh train too much here because, again, I am very wary of what happens with Patriots coaches when they depart that system. By the way, Flo did all right. Flo got fired.
Yeah. But and you mentioned Vrabel too. I mean, is it? Yeah. I mean, is it definitely O'Brien over Vrabel, Michael, or Vrabel doesn't count?
But Vrabel's not on the tree.
Vrabel, he's not on. You don't think so?
Why? Because he never coached in New England. Is that why?
He was a Bill Belichick player for 8 years. Went to Kansas City. Went to Ohio State. Coached with the Texans. I mean, it's not really.
But who did he coach?
He's tree adjacent. He's tree adjacent.
He is. He's somewhat. I will say he's somewhat adjacent. But he spent a really long time in the program as a player. And then what did he do? He went and coached, and really made his bones as a coach in the NFL under who? Bill O'Brien. Another. I mean, like it's Romeo Crennel. Right. I mean, there are other guys around him. You're right. You're right. He's adjacent. But I still consider him at least somewhere in that orbit because everything about him was sort of built into what that culture was, and both as a player and then the other coaches that he coached with alongside on the NFL level when he saw success. So you're right, I'll give you that. But I tried to sneak one by you, and of course you're not being graceful. And I'm wearing my own glasses, by the way. They're not my wife's. So.
Hey man. These are some Tom Fords I have,
I'm just hating. Those are nice. Look. Yeah. But hey, Charles, I do want to ask you on a coaching point, as we are on the doorstep of Black History Month. I'm glad to see that the Rooney Rule is working so well, and that the hires are not exactly going in that direction. But in all seriousness, I do want to ask you. There are other openings, and maybe there will be some African American coaches hired for head coaching jobs. GM's good, head coaching, not so much. But out of the hires that we've seen so far, who's the best one? Is it Josh? And if not Josh, who's the one that you think, okay, I like this. This had a lot of potential. I can see this coach doing very well.
I like Brian Daboll.
And take a bit. Okay, Daboll. Okay.
I'll be honest with you. I do. I like Brian Daboll. I think Daboll's got a chance to have some success in New York. I think the fact that he went through a little bit of adversity, with Buffalo, it wasn't all upside all the time. There were times where he was criticized for some of his game planning. I think he did a really good job with Josh Allen. Doesn't get a ton of credit for that. Here's the thing about Josh. He is an exquisite player, but people have quickly forgotten how much of a project he really was coming into the NFL. I mean, there were people who were like, he might be 3 years before you really start to see the upside of that guy. That's not true. They saw upside immediately with him, and he built every single offseason. And when you talk to Josh, he will tell you a huge part of my growth and my development was working with Brian Daboll, and not only the confidence he had in me, but also, learning how to lead the room from a maturity standpoint, just a lot of detail-oriented things that he talks about. And I am very appreciative for the success that Allen has had and the steps that he took every single year. I just feel like we got here so quickly, people forgot that it was a process and he did need to get better. And there was some awful film on him in year one. There was some awful film on him in year two. He wasn't, where he was now. We're all thinking, Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen going at. So I really like that one. Let me give you a GM one, because I brought his name up on this show.
You did. I remember. That's why I remember him.
Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, who I told you that part of changing the culture of the NFL was going to start to get black executives who have trees. You know what? And Andrew Berry now has a tree. He met a guy in an elevator bank, cut a relationship with him, learned about, brought him in, put him in charge of, football operations. I mean, it was a big deal. And, so for the Vikings to bring him in, I think was great. And by the way, he met with David Tepper. David Tepper just did a want to know what this guy's all about interview. Wasn't going to hire him as GM, but really wanted to meet with him. And Andrew's like, greenlit it. Go. And Andrew knew that David Tepper probably wasn't going to hire him as a GM, but Andrew wanted that for Kwesi to be able to go and meet with an owner, see what it's like. And I think it paid off.
Because for so long, Michael, I know you want to jump back in, but I just want to say for so long, black executives were promoted more often than they were hired externally. So far, 0 for 4 on the head coaching hires.
That's a problem.
Still with one black coach. 5 vacancies to go, so there's still some hope. But, it's absolutely a good thing to recognize it. 2 more black GMs in Chicago and Minnesota. Sorry. I know you guys both want to
I just want to give you one thing that I'm waiting to see what happens here. And that is what happens with Josh McCown and the Texans.
Well, I was going to go there with you. I was definitely going to go there with you.
Yeah, because there was part of me.
What the hell?
There was part of me that when David Culley was hired, I had a conversation with another executive, and I said, tell me I'm out of my mind here. Tell me this is just a whack conspiracy theory that they are hiring someone who's going to be easy to move on from because they know they can't hire Josh McCown now. Because it was hot. When Josh McCown came in, everybody was after Jack Easterby. They're losing their minds. It was crazy that they had even interviewed Josh McCown in the first go-round. Everything seemed like it was going wrong. And I said to this executive, I said, is there any chance that this is my conspiratorial mind working here, they're hiring somebody to get to Josh in, and I said 2 years. I didn't say a year. I said 2 years. Yeah. And I feel like there's this element right now. Now they're talking to Flo and, but Josh McCown gets the second interview and all these different things. I'm kind of like, are they banging around in the garage right now to make you think they're doing a lot of work, but really they're already done with their work? Like they know who they're going to hire. They just need to make it look good and dress it up as much as they possibly can.
Because they can't. If they end up with McCown, they're just going to look bad regardless. And I like Josh as a person.
Right.
But if they hire McCown, they're going to get everything they deserve.
Yeah.
I like Josh as a person. I like him as a leader. I think Josh could make a great coach.
He doesn't deserve this.
I just don't know this. Yeah. This whole idea of you have to earn it, if you're everybody else. And if you're a black head coach, you got to earn it times 10.
Right.
I don't know, man. It's just a bad look if that happens. Now, it may not.
It may
not. I might be wrong here. Okay. But it's not going to go over well. I can tell you that.
And one more thing, Charles, I know I'm so glad you brought that up because I remembered I started watching Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah after you brought him up on the show. And one of the things that stood out to me, and I know present company, we get that we don't think like this. Some people might. I was so happy to see over the weekend, to the reports, that he was reaching out to Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah.
Because for some people of a certain mind, they think, okay, you just want a black GM, So you can come in and bring a Chocolate City kind of operation here. You want a NFL team to be an HBCU, don't you? Okay, look. No, we're talking about opportunities. So I think it's so smart for him to reach out to Harbaugh. Why? Because Harbaugh might be one of the best candidates, if not the best candidate who might be available. And if you're a first-time GM, you're getting in there like, hey, I want to stay here. I want to be successful. You bring him in, your chances of success go up 20, 25, 30%. So I thought that was really a smart reach out. I don't know if it's going to turn into anything, but it was really good to see.
He went straight for the fences. His first cut. He's like, all right, we're going to do this?
Straight up.
Like, all right, let's go.
Yeah.
Now
I'm not taking this pitch.
But here's the thing, too. He has a background with Jim Harbaugh. Obviously, they both spent time in the 49ers together way back in the day. But that's the thing. Like, if you're sitting there, the way I looked at it was, this is awesome. You have a guy who's coming in and he's going, I'm not going to be intimidated by going and hiring somebody potentially hiring somebody with an extremely commanding personality who has a history for grinding, the personnel department, has a history for grinding coaching staffs, for, forcing that workload. And, sometimes I think you can get GMs who come in, particularly young GMs, who sit there and go, man, that's the first person I really want to bring in. You get a little, I don't want to say intimidated, but Jim Harbaugh is not going to be the easiest head coach to manage. He never has been anywhere. Okay. But that's fine. He's a winner. And that's what ultimately you're reaching for here. So I thought it was a pretty, for lack of a better term, it's pretty ballsy. It was good for him to immediately go after the big fish.
Dabo, McDaniels, Eberflus and Hackett off the board, Saints, Jags, Vikings we just talked about, Texans we just talked about, although I wish they could be relegated. I really do at this point. And the Dolphins, which I guess I find it hard to believe that the Dolphins and Stephen Ross would let somebody else, even though Ross said, I'm not going to be the guy taking from Michigan. You'll let somebody else do it. That'll be interesting to see. So last question, 5 openings left. You're obviously watching all of them. What's the interview, the match, the search, the team that's really – you're honed in on it. The Jags interviewing Rich Bisaccia is smart, even though the Jags continue to find new and creative ways to make this more difficult than it needs to be. Jim Caldwell, Byron Leftwich, pick one. Shouldn't be that hard. What's the search that you're most interested in, for lack of a better question?
Jags brought Vic Fangio too. Don't forget that. The Jags.
Yeah, I saw that.
They're flying everybody in. Man, that's a really good question. Well, we talked about it already. I'm really interested to see. Harbaugh is. I'm more focused on Harbaugh right now. I think I'm looking at Harbaugh because it's obvious to me that you don't take the Minnesota interview unless you're really serious about potentially getting back into the NFL. And I'm sitting there, I'm staring at that, and then I'm staring at Stephen Ross, as you said. And I'm thinking, Stephen Ross has got to be going, if he's going to leave, am I really just I'm going to opt out of this? I'm not even going to check in and see if there's any way to bring him into Miami. I think Harbaugh is the big piece on the board still that everybody is sort of staring at. I thought other than Harbaugh, McDaniels was, if he was going to leave, in reality, it was going to be for what was deemed to be a good situation. That was the Raiders. Beyond the Raiders, let me put the question back to you. What's now the best situation on the board? Because it's the Raiders is a good spot. Low key, the Raiders is a really good spot. It's a stadium that's jammed. It's the facilities are all new. The owner is pretty easy going. He lets you do your thing. So you tell me, what's the one on the board that you're like, okay, hey, now,
listen, Mike, let me take this. After seeing what the Cincinnati Bengals have done, it's got to be Jacksonville, right? He's got
ain't no way to go but up. I told you, Urban Meyer somehow made the job better than when he got it, and he was set up to succeed like no coach in history has been set up to succeed. He screwed it up. Now the next guy, that's why Vic Fangio's an upgrade. Okay, we'll take 7 and 9. We'll take 7 and 10. Yeah. There's nowhere to go but up in Jacksonville.
But what about the GM?
Yeah, well, that's an issue.
Hey,
yeah.
listen,
okay.
maybe that's why
that's a pretty big issue, man.
But But maybe that's why Byron Leftwich, that's why the thing is kind of held up a little bit. Hey, you trying to keep Trent Baalke?
Vikings got talent. I mean, it ain't a bad job to take over Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson. But the Saints with all they – go ahead.
Vikings, low-key, I mean, the Vikings do. That's a good job. Like, I don't – if you look at the roster, you look at the roster, there's a lot there, okay? The skill position pieces are nice. The quarterback, you can say whatever you want about Kirk Cousins, but you know what? Like, it's better to have the 15th best quarterback in the league than the 27th, you know?
Yeah, he'll buy you a couple of years. I was just going to say as we go to break, the Saints, you know, look, as bad as the cap situation is, at least that's an organization. Like Mickey Loomis, you could have worse GMs to work with. You know what I mean? They at least have a track record of roster construction. So the Saints, and there's going to be some talent left over after the cap, you know, reconstruction, if you will. There'll be some talent there. All right. Hey, appreciate you, Chuck. Thank you, sir.
All right, thanks, guys.
Hey, thanks for watching Brother from Another on YouTube. Make sure you hit subscribe before you leave, and be sure to watch us 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Peacock. Appreciate you.